Welcome back to Area DMG. I'm your host, Hope Wesley, the Mile High Mouth. And for today's episode of Area DMG, we're taking a look at the kind of an esoteric thing, actually. The top 10 Nintendo DS and Nintendo 3DS compilations. What's a compilation? A compilation is a collection of games. There are many of these on the Nintendo DS and the Nintendo 3DS. Sometimes you'll get some that are similar to, like, say, Clubhouse games, where it's just a collection of about 30 to 40 or even less of types of games like billiards or solitaire or whatnot. As we go through this, we're going to mention some of the things that made this list, some of the things that didn't, and special shout-outs to other ones. But these are the top 10 Nintendo DS compilation packs. Now, we are not considering anything digital only. This is only for the US in North America. And unfortunately for us, we did not get a physical release of the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney collection that they put out for the Nintendo 3DS. That's eShop only, and that's a real shame because that would be really high up on this list if it were available physically. So, when we looked at this, we realized that there are a ton of different things. Like, there are some weird ones, like, here's a Ben 10 triple pack. There were 3 Ben 10 games out for the Nintendo DS, and this particular game pack right here, this game card has all 3 of them in one game pack, or game card. We did try to consider ones that are specifically made to show off collections like that. Let's go ahead and start with our first one. One thing you're going to note is that a lot of these are retro compilations. The first one up here is Intellivision Lives. Now, this one's on here because it's got a heck of a lot of Intellivision games and a lot of historical documents and materials in it. If you're a collector or somebody who loves retro games, you need Intellivision Lives in your life. Literally, it's got like some really nice features and lots of information about the Intellivision system and the games and fairly accurate emulation of those games. Intellivision Lives is our number 10, and it's kind of the collection of the oldest games here, except for a couple titles that didn't make our list, which would be the Game & Watch collection games from Nintendo. These are Club Nintendo exclusive in the United States, and while these contain some of my favorite games, let's see, one of these contains Fire and an Oil Panic. You have quite a few different ones in there. There's Octopus, and then there's the second one has this weird conglomeration, or rather collusion, or collaboration of Octopus and Shark Attacker, this thing where these people are parachuting in. It's a pretty good game, but they're kind of limited in size, especially when compared to the Game Boy Gallery or Game & Watch Gallery games that are on the Game Boy Color, and the Game Boy Advance. Kind of a shame that the DS things of these would be lacking. And so limited, too, because they're all Club Nintendo exclusives. You had to get them from Club Nintendo or from other people who bought them from Club Nintendo. Another one that's not going to be on this list is Kirby Superstar Ultra. Because while the Super Nintendo game that this is a port of is a bunch of different little Kirby games, there are a bunch of little Kirby mini-games, essentially. It's a compilation of games that, well, were never released on their own to begin with. The same thing applies to Puzzles & Dragons Z and Puzzles & Dragons Super Mario Edition, which were separate games in Japan, not so much in the United States. Let's get to our next one up on this list, and that would be Atari Greatest Hits Collection 1. Now, there's 2 of these, and they're both worth picking up. That's Nintendo Greatest Hits Arcade Volume 1 and Volume 2. These have reproductions of the manuals, interviews with Nolan Bushnell, and all sorts of little hardcore things for people who collect these games. There's another game that's somewhere on this list that, well, I'll explain it when I get there, but yeah, if you are a fan of the old retro Atari games and you want to play Crystal Caverns again or Breakout or whatnot, you need to pick up Atari's Greatest Hits Collection. There's 2 volumes, both are worth it. Now let's get up to the next one on this list. That would be Namco Museum DS. Namco Museum DS is fantastic. Now there are some issues with this game, but the issues actually relegate to how hardcore it actually is. This is a game where you can take a look at an arcade Pac-Man, and they'll even let you physically monitor and toggle the dip switches in it. However, if you put on like the rack mode or free play mode, it'll tell you this is not available in this particular software, which is sad. A bunch of the safe places work in Namco Museum DS on their copy of Pac-Man. It's quite frankly one of the more accurate versions of Pac-Man available on the Nintendo DS or 3DS. And this also has Pac-Man Versus, which was that weird little game that they showed off for the GameCube and the Game Boy, where one player is Pac-Man, the others are the ghosts, and it does not require additional game cartridges, game packs to play, or game cards to play. If you just have this, you can play with up to 4 other people, Pac-Man Versus, which is excellent. It also has Galaga, Galaxian, Mappy Land, and things like that. But yeah, there was a 3DS game that came out about the same type of thing called Pac-Man and Galaga Dimensions. While that has a good version of Pac-Man in it, it doesn't have anywhere near the hardcore emulation or the... It's not as good as that version. It's got like these weird dimensions versions of these, which, it's okay. But Namco Museum DS is the better bang for your buck, essentially. Now let's put that one over here. Now that we've gone through some of these, you might notice there's a bit of a trend going with these. All sorts of good retro ones. Another good retro one is Williams Pinball Arcade Hall of Fame. And this one has emulated versions of pinball game cabinets. And it's actually pretty good. The 3D effect is fine. Pretty interesting. Good for collectors or people who are kind of hardcore pinball nuts. Although it won't satisfy you like an actual pinball machine would. But on the bright side, it costs substantially less than an actual pinball machine. I tell you what, yeah. Oh, going back into Atari, I should mention that Retro Atari Classics is not here. Retro Atari Classics has like an older version of it and then a remixed version with graphics from various graffiti artists, including Shepard Fairey, who you might know for his Obey Andre the Giant stickers and for his Hope Obama posters, even though he became fairly disenchanted with that guy over the years. I think it's after he got arrested. Anyways, yeah, Shepard Fairey and a bunch of other different graffiti artists contributed to Retro Atari. And it's okay, but I don't recommend it over, say, Atari's Greatest Hits or whatnot. Some interesting versions of older games, but there's a reason it's not on this list. Another one that's not on this list is Super Scribblenauts Collection. This is Scribblenauts and Super Scribblenauts Collection on one card, with some refinements in both. Now, there's another game similar to this, like Drawn to Life. Drawn to Life has a collection called Drawn to Life Collection, of course. But I would recommend not getting Drawn to Life Collection unless you are actually collecting these. Drawn to Life and Drawn to Life The Next Chapter are pretty good games. Drawn to Life is completely unscathed on Drawn to Life Collection, but Drawn to Life The Next Chapter is censored on Drawn to Life Collection, especially the ending. You should check it out sometime. A lot of people have commented on how really messed up the ending is to Drawn to Life The Next Chapter. And that ending is removed completely, excised completely, and changed completely from Drawn to Life to in the Drawn to Life collection. So if you want uncensored Drawn to Life, you have to buy it separately. The Next Chapter. The first one's fine. But yeah, we don't have a copy of Drawn to Life collection. We have one that might be sent to us soon, but yeah, we don't currently have it, and it's not going to be in this video because I don't recommend people get it over the individual ones. Unless you're collecting like me. Okay, let's see what's next on our list. We've had Intellivision Lives, Atari's Greatest Hits, Namco Museum. Seeing kind of a trend here? Next up, Konami Classics series arcade hits. Thankfully, it's not any of their pachinko machines, but this does have arcade Contra on it, and that makes it worth the price. It makes that completely worth the price alone. And then there's a bunch of other good ones on there, like Gaigar and other types of Konami arcade classics. Definitely worth checking out, especially for arcade Contra. Now, let's see what's in our next list. Our next one up is 100 classic books. Now, back in the day, when you could connect to the Nintendo Wi-Fi zone, you could actually download three more books. You can't do that anymore because the Wi-Fi thing's down. Gee, digital stuff disappearing? How weird. Anyways, I like 100 classic books because that's what it is. It's 100 classic books. There is a more child-friendly version of this called Junior Classics, which, it's not as good, but it's because it's missing a bunch of stuff that this one has. This one has a lot of Sherlock Holmes. You'll have a lot of things from like Samuel Clemens, or rather Mark Twain. There are some pretty interesting books in here, and it's definitely worth checking out. We always support literacy, and we feel that this, which is going as low as 97 cents now at some GameStop locations, is worth your time. You have to hold your 3DS or 2DS or 3DS XL or whatever vertically like a book, but it's worth it, and they're worth reading. Lots of different little options in there. They're all books that are public domain, but that doesn't mean they're not worth reading. Now keep in mind though that some of the content in these books is politically incorrect for the day, so there's your little trigger warning for this fantastic collection. And the fact that you need trigger warnings for that is kind of sad. Anyways, let's see, 100 classic books. Next one up on our list is Contra IV. Now, Contra IV, which will work on the new 3DS and on the new 3DS XL, and on any DS thing. It's an NTR thing, so you can import this, and it'll still work. Contra IV is a compilation, but you kind of have to unlock some of the stuff. And this is noteworthy because it's got Contra, Super C, and Contra. This one has the original NES Contra, which has not been released on Virtual Console in the United States in a portable form, which makes it exceptional. There's 3 Contra games in here and a fantastic Contra 4. If you have this game, Konami Arcade Classics, that one that we mentioned earlier, and a new 3DS XL or a new 3DS and Contra 3, you have all of the good Contras in one device, essentially. Totally worth it if you are a fan of that classic shooter. And now, for disclosure purposes, I do know many of the people who worked on this game because Contra 4 was developed by WayForward, and I believe they did a great job. But I just really like Contra, and I feel that Contra 4 works on a variety of levels, and it has the original Contra and Super C on the game card. Unlockable. Fantastic. Especially considering one of them hasn't been released on Virtual Console. So yeah, that's where we are on that. So far we've had Intellivision Lives, Atari's Greatest Hits, Namco Museum DS, Konami Classics Arcade, 100 Classic Books, Contra 4. What on earth could be in this row? Well, here's some things that aren't. This is the Legacy of Ys collection. It's a remaster of Ys Books 1 and Books 2, with some moderate changes in plot. Oh, and this over here is Angry Birds Trilogy. It's Angry Birds, I think Rio, and I'm trying to remember if Angry Birds Space is in it. It's 3 different Angry Birds games that were available for free on iPhones and other mobile devices, but they put them together on a 3DS game with some minor 3D functions and touchscreen functionality, of course. It's got some weird frame rate issues, but other than that, it's okay. This one also has some weird issues regarding frame rate, and a lot of the fans didn't like some of the changes made to Ys 1 and Ys 2 in this one. Still worth playing, though. The Ys series is fantastic. It's one of those reasons why you probably should own a PlayStation Vita at some point, too. But yeah, Falcom games published by Atlas on the Nintendo DS. Yeah, that's good stuff. So let's go into what these 4 could possibly be. Let's see, what's number 4? Oh, Sonic Classic Collection. Now, the emulation on these is kind of iffy in comparison to, say, Sonic and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the 3D Classics collection and whatnot, the 3D Classics ones that they have. But yeah, Sonic Classic Collection has Sonic 1, 2, 3, Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic 2 and Knuckles, all on the same card. And unlike Sonic Genesis on the Game Boy Advance, they're all perfectly playable. They may not be perfectly emulated, and there are some key differences in timing and frame rate in areas, but this is the only way you can currently play Sonic 3 on your Nintendo DS with a physical copy, or just, legitimately, without homebrew and stuff. And it's totally worth it to play this with Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. Sonic 3 is fantastic. Sonic 1 and 2 are good, although better versions of them exist digitally. It's a good collection, and you should check it out. It's pretty cheap everywhere, and it's worth it, especially if you're a fan of the blue blur. Let's take a look at what this is actually a 3DS one, and that would be Sega 3D Classics Collection. Like we mentioned before, this one has Sonic 1 on it, not Sonic 2. Altered Beast for some reason. Power Drift, which is awesome. Puyo, something or other. One of the Puyo things. Those are great. It also has like 4 different versions of Fantasy Zone, including the Master System one. And I think it's got like Thunder Edge in it. And yeah, it's worth checking out because it has a lot of also historical information about those. It is kind of hosted by the rabbit that's in charge of the old Master System manuals, and it's definitely worth checking out. The 3D options on here are fantastic. You can choose between Japanese and international versions of the games. You can choose the sound emulation. There's more additions to it. They really should put out this is actually Sega 3D Classics Collection 2 in Japan. There were 2 in there in Japan, and this is the second one. I kind of hope that they bring out like a third one, because they really need to get to Sonic 3, and they really need to get to stuff like Golden Axe or Streets of Rage 3, etc. Yeah, it's pretty good. Now, let's get back to, let's see. We've gone through these 8. Let's see what number 2 is. Oh, number 2. Mega Man Legacy Collection. Now, the Mega Man Legacy Collection, it's actually kind of interesting because if you bought this digitally, it's actually cheap. It's actually much cheaper than the physical one because they know that, people would get this instead of Mega Man 1 through 6. Mega Man 1 through 6 are available on Virtual Console, but the options to play them aren't as good as the options in Mega Man Legacy Collection. I know the other ones are more the original NES ones, but you don't get to play them with like really nice themes. You don't get to play all sorts of different challenges, which are unlocked by the Mega Man Amiibo. In fact, some versions of Mega Man Legacy Collection came with a golden version of Mega Man. But yeah, there's also a sound test and such. I would note that the sound on Mega Man Legacy Collection is a little bit low. So it's one of those where you really might want really good headphones with noise canceling or a good headphone amp. Otherwise, you won't really be able to enjoy the sound test on this as much as you normally would be able to. The sound is great, the emulation is great on these, the graphics are great, the borders are great. This is just a great overall Mega Man game collection, especially considering how cheap the physical and digital copies of these are. Now, this I definitely recommend. Mega Man is a fantastic game. I've always loved those. I've always also loved like the Mega Man X games and such, but there is a collection of games that I liked much more than that. And this will be a little controversial, but this is my number 1 pick. Now let's see, we've had Intellivision Lives, Atari's Greatest Hits, Namco Museum, Konami's Arcade Classics, 100 Classic Books, Contra IV, Sonic Classic Collection, Sega 3D Classics Collection, Mega Man Legacy Collection, and then finally, the Mega Man Zero Collection. Now, I love these games on the Game Boy Advance. I played the daylights out of the first one, and I've beaten all 4 of them. This has all 4 Game Boy Advance games with slightly enhanced graphics and a mode which allows you to play through them beginning to end, all the way through, no credits, essentially one right after the other because their stories are interconnected. And that mode there, that Zero Collection mode, is fantastic. It's kind of a great way to experience the interesting story behind Mega Man Zero. I love these games. They're hard as heck in some points. And if you're a fan of like Mega Man X, Mega Man, or Mighty Number 9, or Azure Striker Gunvolt, or Mega Man Zero in general, you owe it to yourself to pick up Mega Man Zero Collection. This particular game goes for about 20 used, 30 new, and it's totally worth it, ladies and gentlemen. And that's my top 10 compilations for the Nintendo DS. Are there any you think I missed, or any that you disagree with on this list? Let me know in the comments below. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until the next video comes out, you are now caught up.